The Center for African American Poetry and Poetics, founded in 2016 by Dawn Lundy Martin and Terrence Hayes, is a creative think tank for African American and African diasporic poetries and poetics. Our mission is to highlight, promote, and share the work of Black poets and to pollinate cross-disciplinary conversation and collaboration. Our programming aims to present exciting live poetry and conversation, contextualize the meaning of that work, and archive it for future generations. The work of the Center is vital at this particular time, when so many Black poets are at the forefront of contemporary American poetry. African diasporic poets are pushing the envelope of poetics and expressions of Blackness through art. Though some attention has been paid to the fact of Black poetry, there has been little discussion of what the diverse Black poetries of this particular moment mean and do. In a climate of renewed attention on racial disparities and systematic violence against African Americans and other people of color, the Center is focused on a poetics of engagement in relation to this historic moment and with an eye toward moments to come. Since our inception, we have hosted world-renowned poets, visual artists, architects, filmmakers, and scholars, including Claudia Rankine, Fred Moten, Thaddeus Mosley, Carrie Mae Weems, Ross Gay, Carl Phillips, John Keane, LaToya Ruby Frazier, Lorna Simpson, Arthur Jaffa, and Christina Sharp. These are just a handful of the esteemed guests who have visited CAP in various capacities over the past 3 years. There are 4 MacArthur Genius Award winners among them. Our community partners are crucial to our mission. Poets and writers are featured on campus, but they also visit our community partners in their constituencies, often leading hands-on workshops in intimate settings in historically Black neighborhoods such as the Hill District and Homewood. Through this engagement, we not only bridge the gap between the university and the community, but we elevate and expand the work that poetry can do. Good afternoon, everyone, or good evening, or good morning, depending on where you are. I'm Dawn Lundy Martin. I am a professor of English at the University of Pittsburgh and the director for the Center for African American Poetry and Poetics. Welcome to the CAP Salon, this afternoon event featuring Kiese Laymon and Wura-Natasha Ogunji for a week of innovative and exciting programming titled Witness, a CAP Black study on intimacy. And in that witness, the H is parenthetical because we're complicating what that means, right? Witness, being with, witness, etc. Witness, a CAP Black study on intimacy is a week-long series of events. We're at the end of that now. We have one more event this evening that engages in themes related to intimacy and witness, as in being with, in this historical moment. We've invited our guests to consider the processes and forms of being with, being wit or having wit, and being witness. How does the notion of intimacy, for example, invigorate, exacerbate, or maybe leave a creative practice bereft during COVID times? For this series, we believe that creative practice is as playful as it is deeply spiritual and potentially transformational. What if, while in creative practice, we eschewed the illegitimate narratives that seek to batter our imaginations? What if we focused on the kinds of epistemologies or knowledges that are made possible when we centralize the imaginations of Black people? Wouldn't that be something? What if, in this new weather, we focused on the conditions from which intimacy, or Black intimacy, might emerge? It's been interesting so far. We've talked a little bit this week about what a Black intimacy is or might be. And when those conversations were happening, I thought of Kiese's focus and heavy on the creativity and particularity of Black speech in Mississippi, and how some experiences need that Black Mississippi language in order to convey what the experience truly is. I thought about Wura's 4-hour long performance titled Beauty, in which she and 4 other women have their hair braided together in public space in Lagos, and the intense vulnerability of that temporary installation. It seemed like it was part protest, part space claiming, part endurance performance, and then something else that I can't quite name. Maybe something approaching a kind of Black intimacy. I'm going to introduce Wura first, and then I'll return later to introduce Kiese. But notably, I just want to mention this, in the spirit of Black intimacy, there won't be a moderator for the conversation portion of this event. The artists are just going to talk to each other. So I want to thank you so much for joining us. And I want to thank the Dietrich School and the Dietrich Foundation for their continued support of our work here at CAP. Okay, here is a bit about Wura. Wura-Natasha Ogunji is a visual artist and performer. Her works include drawings hand-stitched into tracing paper, videos and public performances. Her work is deeply inspired by the daily interactions and frequencies that occur in the city of Lagos, Nigeria, from the epic to the intimate. Ogunji's performances explore the presence of women in public space. These often include investigations of labor, leisure, freedom, and frivolity. Recent exhibitions include the pleasurable, the illegible, the multiple, the mundane at Artspace Sydney, Alpha Crucis at Astrup, Fernley, Museet, and Oslo, and A Stranger's Soul is a Deep Well at Friedman Gallery in New York. She was an artist curator for the 33rd Sao Paulo Biennial, where her large-scale performance, Days of Being Free, premiered. She has exhibited at many, many places, the Museum of Modern Art Paris, the Lagos Biennial, 154 in London and New York, the Seattle Art Museum, Brooklyn Art Museum, the Louisiana Museum of Modern Art, Denmark, lots of places all around the world. She is a recipient of the Guggenheim Foundation Fellowship and has received numerous grants. She has a BA from Stanford University and an MFA from San Jose State University in photography. She currently resides in where is founder of the experimental art space, the Treehouse. Please join me in welcoming one of the most innovative artists in the world, Wura-Natasha Ogunji.
Thank you, Dawn. I'm really happy to be here, and I want to start by looking at some images and thinking about something that I read of Kiese's work that was published last year called Mississippi, A Poem in Days, where he says that this should not haunt me, but phantoms move at their own speed. And I've been thinking a lot, we can look at the first image now. I've been thinking a lot about the images that come up in my work. And oftentimes I'm drawing from images of my father, who I never met, but who I happen to have photographs of and an archive of journals. And so I've been thinking of how he wrote about phantoms moving at their own speed and thinking about perhaps language is a way to open space and to breathe and to think about our connections to these histories and how we're thinking about presence and intimacy. So this is a piece that I drew in 2011, and then I went back into it in 2017. And in the next image, you'll see the reverse of the drawing. So you can see that I'm stitching from both sides of the piece, and I'm really interested in the space of glitches, of mistakes, of not knowing and what that can reveal to us. In the next image, you'll see that a lot of my figures happen on the space of the ocean, or the sea, the Atlantic, and I really like to think about that space not only as a place of history and memory, but a place of creativity and a place that brings a lot of possibilities. The Ife head is a character in a way, as well as a drawing that is always entering the space of my videos and my drawings. And I'm thinking a lot about this movement across the sea and movement like deep into language, visual language, and also the language of, I guess, my own life and my own history. In the next piece, which is much larger, I'm thinking a lot about scale, and the theme of witness to me is very much about ideas of scale. So how you go deep into something and come back out and look at something, and those movements and changes really give you a sense of yourself and of space and of what's around. The next slide shows the detail of the small image. This piece is called Beauty Marks, Conversations on the Open Ocean. And so this idea of a thing in a thing in a thing is something that's coming out a lot for me in my studio. And the images are often coming from drawings that I'm making today, but also pieces that I'm cutting out of old drawings and then reintroducing. So the language is turning and changing and in a way being destroyed and reconstituted in new and old ways, I guess I would say. For the next one, which I think may be the final drawing here, this is lagoons and lagoons and lagoons. And again, I'm thinking about this expanse of sea and this idea of catching up to yourself. So originally the work was titled, She Finally Caught Up to Herself, Atlantic Side. And there's the sense of like, how do we know that we're on the journey that we should be on? And that when we get there, we have this sense of returning to things that are sometimes difficult, but also like moving through portals. The next one is a detail of the smaller areas of the drawing. So these again are pieces that I've worked on in the past, cut out, and then reinserted into the larger works. So next I want to talk about return to my father and talk about this archive he left. So the image of the cover of his journal is from a group of maybe, I don't know, 15 years of his recording of his dreams. So he wrote his dreams, and he wrote and he made little drawings in the book as well. And then within this, he also left lists, and there were 3 lists that he left. And so recently I've returned to these lists, and I've decided to start stitching the list. So one of the lists is called, in the next slide, you'll see medals, and it's the 4th list. So he made 3, and they were numbered 2, 3, and 4. And so on the right, you see where I've traced in graphite below, and then I've started stitching his words. And I was very interested in this idea of like connecting to this person I never met, but also that I could have this amazing meeting point that was in a completely imaginative space. And I've thought a lot about this in relation to what our parents give us, and do our parents give us the things we need or the things we want? And I think oftentimes we don't get the things that we want, but we get the things that we need. And those things become ways for us to enter into understanding our life and sort of purpose, but also like the language of our life and the language of creating and the language of making. The next list here, I believe, is the second one. So this one's Precious and Semi-Precious Gems is the first list that he made. And then the next one is Industrial Minerals, I believe, number 3. And then the next one, I think, is, Metal. So that one's the first one that I showed. So as I was revisiting these lists and stitching them into paper, I started thinking about memoir. And I've always, since I moved to Lagos and since I've had a relationship with Lagos, which is about 11 years now, I've been writing about my experiences in this place and thinking about how I would like to write a memoir about this place. But I'm not interested in the novel so much. So then I really like this idea of lists, and I began to think about, well, okay, what was the first thing what was number 1 in this list? And I started doing all this research and thinking, oh, it must be related to oil, and oh, maybe he wanted to talk about this other thing. And then I just thought, oh, this doesn't really matter. Like, what would be my own beginning? And so then I decided that I would start with bodies of water, because these seem to be like really important anchor points as I move in my life. So in the next image, you'll see bodies of water, and they go from very specific, and then some of them are obvious descriptions like pool, puddles, and ponds, and then some are very specific places where I've lived, moving around the country and moving outside of the country, and those being kind of the carriers of my story in many ways. So I really liked the fact that I could think about this idea of a thing within a thing within a thing in relationship to my father and his making of lists, and how there were things that I wanted from him that I didn't get, but that I got this like amazing form of his writing and his imaginative space, and then also this mundane space of making lists that then became a really important architecture in my own creation of language. And maybe even, thinking about Kiese's line of like, phantoms move at their own speed, that like I'm returning to this person and this figment in my life, and but because there are still things that I need from the thinking about him. So now I want to switch to another body of work that I started just before, I guess in February of last year. And if you go to the next image, it's taken in Benin City here in Nigeria, which has a very long history of bronze casting. And I was very interested in trying something totally new. And also, because my last name is Ogunji, I was thinking about, like, I felt like when I had the opportunity to go to Benin and to explore metal, like that there was something there that I needed to recover and return to and explore, and that could be part of my own language. And Ogunji is from the god of iron in Yoruba cosmology, and it's my name means Ogun wakes up. And I've always loved my name, but at the same time, I felt like a little ambivalent about it, because I didn't, because I grew up with my mother, and all the things that she gave me seemed to like outweigh the non-relationship that I really had with my father. So this return to Benin is really exciting and interesting to me for many reasons. So I'm just going to show you a few images of my experiments, and then a short video of the metal pour. So the next piece shows the flower, the heliconia, when it's being prepared to become bronze. And in Benin City, they're using the lost wax method, which means that you make a wax of an object, and then you cover that object in a mold, and you heat that mold in a very hot fire, and the wax burns out, leaving the impression of the object. And then the metal gets poured in, and there are sprues, or we call them runners here, that are attached to the object, here in this case the flower, in order to create like a road for the metal to follow, to fill up the emptiness, the negative space within the mold. So the next piece is the first, my first experiment, which was at the outdoor studio, and these are pineapple plants, and I decided that I would cast some pineapple leaves, and so we cut the leaves, and the caster attached to these sprues, and then the next image you see the cast leaves on the ground, and sorry, backstage for a second. So I just wanted to hold them up here because they're really they have a great sound, and also they have a great weight to it, and it's a really amazing thing to go from something organic to something that also comes from the earth, but is in a completely other form, and occupies space in a very different way. So to the next image, which I believe is, can you show the next image? Okay, great. Okay, this is the video of the metal pour. So the mold gets put in the earth, and then there's a hole where the sprue is, or the runner, and the hot metal gets poured in and fills up the mold. The mold gets opened, and then you have your metal object. So we can play this now. Oh, oops, did it play? Okay, so the video didn't play? Okay,
Sorry,
no problem.
technical difficulties with that video.
Okay, that's okay. Well, let's just go to the next thing. So the last image that I'll show is a cast of the journal that I wrote in from January to July of last year. And I felt like, of course it was a really full time of year. And I also felt like I wanted to transform the words and the thoughts and the experience into something else. I didn't want to throw it away, but I also didn't want to, well, I guess I did want to destroy it, but I also wanted to hold on to it. So I cast the journal in brass. So the journal went into the mold, and then that went into the fire, and it burned off, and then the metal got poured into the mold. And in the final image, you'll see in the back of the journal, some of the ash, so some of the pages that still remained burned within the book, and that didn't leave, but that became part of the piece, so that there's this glitch and this mistake was also something that, and maybe the phantom is something that resides there, but is also very important to the new thing that is made. That's all for now.
Thank you so much for you. I could listen to you talk about your work forever, I swear. I forgot that I was hosting this event because I was taking notes, and one of the things that I'm just going to carry with me throughout this day is this idea that witness is about scale. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Kiese Laymon is a Black Southern writer from Jackson, Mississippi. Laymon is the author of the genre-bending novel Long Division and the essay collection How to Slowly Kill Yourself and Others in America. Laymon's best-selling memoir, Heavy, an American Memoir, won the 2019 Andrew Carnegie Medal for Excellence in Nonfiction, the 2018 Christopher Isherwood Prize for Autobiographical Prose, and the Austen Riggs Erikson Prize for Excellence in mental health media and was named one of the 50 best memoirs of the past 50 years by the New York Times. If you have not read it, you should definitely read it. I've been spending a lot of time with this book, reading it and listening to the audio. The audiobook read by the author, Kiese Laymon, was named the Audible 2018 Audiobook of the Year. Laymon is also the recipient of the 2020-2021 Radcliffe Fellowship at Harvard. He is at work at several new projects, including the long poem, Good God, the horror comedy, and so on, the children's book, City Summer, Country Summer, and the film, Heavy, an American Memoir. He is the founder of the Catherine Coleman Literary Arts and Justice Initiative, a program aimed at getting Mississippi kids and their parents more comfortable with reading, writing, revising, and sharing. Please join me in welcoming the extraordinary writer, Kiese Laymon.
Hey, Dawn.
Turn it over to you.
All right. First of all, I want to thank you, Dawn, and just thank the entire team for inviting me to talk with Wura about her incredible work. I didn't expect to be so moved by the work. We were able to see the work beforehand. And I deeply believe in revision, and I don't like to share work with people that hasn't been through, 10, 15, 20 rounds of revision. But looking at Wara's work, I was like inspired, right? I felt courage, because so much of what I'm doing in this new work, particularly in this work called Good God, is about Black heads. And I'm going to talk about this in very not so refined ways, because I'm not talked about this new work yet. So I'm still trying to find out how to talk about it. But what I want to do is I want to read to you maybe the first 2 pages of the work. And then I'm going to do something you're never supposed to do, which is I want to stop when it gets like super interesting. And all you really need to know about this new book called Good God is it is a dreamscape / poem / fiction / memoir / non-fictive exploration into the week that my great grandfather came back to my grandmother's house after abandoning her 45 years earlier. I was there that week. A lot of incredible things happened in the beginning of that week. By the end of the week, my grandfather is dead. But I wanted to focus the book on the importance of like Black Mississippi heads. And you'll hopefully see why, and hopefully see the connection to Wara's work, specifically to Know This Side, Journey and Messenger, and Beauty Mark. So just gonna read like 2 pages, and then hopefully we can talk about it a little bit, and then we can get back to talking to Wara about like this mind-blowing work that she's shown all of us. All right. Grandmama's in her kitchen, massaging the tummies of tea cakes, and I am making her a paper fan. She can fan her head. It's hotter than a dresser drawer in hell, but Grandmama is still wearing the tan pantsuit Mama gave her for Christmas. She's supposed to be resting. The last thing Grandmama said before finishing the tea cakes was, "Key, my head part of my body, and my face part of my head." I'm 9 years old, and I feel good when I hear that sentence. I'm licking the tea cake batter off of every finger except my 2 thumbs, knowing good and well that the smell and only the smell will make it till tomorrow. I am on the floor of the living room watching Grandmama's cousin, Walter Payton. Grandmama's cousin is the greatest football player on earth, and he is running to and from yesterday in slow motion. Grandmama's cousin never runs out of bounds, no matter how close he is to the sideline. Grandmama's cousin puts his head down. He searches for other heads of men who are trying to tackle him. He tries to make the strong men's heads pay for wanting to tackle him. Grandmama's cousin puts his head down. Then we hope he raises his head up. Inside of Grandmama's 600 square foot pink shotgun house is shaded by 2 pecan trees. There is no thermostat. There is no air conditioner. There is Grandmama. Before making tea cakes, Grandmama placed the strongest box fan in the window facing opposite the pecan trees. She placed the weaker box fans in her bedroom window and faced it toward the water hose and the sticker bushes. Grandmama always leaves the front door open, and she makes me close the door to Mama and them's old bedroom. It's more than 104 degrees in Forest, Mississippi today, but Grandmama's living room feels like the coolest place on earth. I rip a piece of a yellow legal pad that Grandmama gave me. Looking at it the long way, I fold the paper maybe an inch forward, then I forward the next inch backwards, then the next inch forward, then the next inch backwards. These folds are all connected to pieces of the paper folded opposite them. They are touching, they are intimate, but they are not the same. This fan is how I control the weather in Grandmama's house. It's how I make her head cooler. Grandmama controls the weather in different ways. I hear 4 bangs outside of Grandmama's screen door. No one who knocks on Grandmama's screen in the summer knocks more than 3 times. Most folks don't knock at all. Hey, Miss Cat, they say with their faces, or really their heads pressed against the screen, and they say, y'all good? On this summer day, from the kitchen, Grandmama asks, who in the world is up in there banging on her door like the police? No one is banging on her door like the police. Police in Forest, Mississippi do not be knocking. Outside the screen door stands an old black man with frown lines even deeper than Grandmama's. The depth of those frown lines, the heavy hang of both lips, the creases beneath his graying eyes give this old black man's head a shape and symmetry that, even at 10, I find sexy and familiar. In addition to his butter brown boots, his lean, ashen body is held up by these sky blue overalls. Tucked under his right arm is a huge wrinkled paper sack. Like most of the black men of Forest, Mississippi, I can see the imprint and the weight of what I assume is a small 22 in his front bib pocket. Over a supper of collard greens, black-eyed peas, and squirrel dumplings that I refused to eat because last Halloween I was Rocky and Grandmama was Bullwinkle. Grandmama tells me that this old black man is technically her father, but I should not dare call him my great-granddaddy. Call him Albert Peyton Key. Grandmama says right in front of his face, right in front of his head. That's who he always been to me, Albert Peyton. Grandmama's the greatest storyteller I know, but she never tells stories at dinner about anything other than the food she prepares. Where the black-eyed peas come from, how she could have never made the squash just right, why the dumplings could have been way better, what she plans to do with the leftovers. Today, though, she tells the story of how Albert Peyton left her mama and all her sisters when Grandmama was 6. Albert Peyton left, and her mama soon died, and everyone except Grandmama moved up to Chicago, Indianapolis, Racine, Milwaukee. Grandmama did not run, nor if she questioned the greatness of her and other Black Mississippians' migration. As a teenager, she stayed in Mississippi to work land she believed would one day be free. There was no high school Grandmama could go to in Pachuta, so she moved in with the woman we all call Mama Rose over in Morton. Albert Peyton eventually moved in with Mama Rose. A few years later, he left Mama Rose supposedly for another woman. Grandmama says she waited 6 years for Albert Peyton to bring his ass home. Today is the first day Grandmama has seen her father in 46 years and 2 months, and she hates him. Grandmama's eyes keep twitching and her right leg will not stop hopping. She is never happy when men do not do their work. She hates Albert Peyton, I assume, because his job was to ensure that his children and his Black wife, already targeted by the worst parts of our state, did not suffer more than they had to. Grandmama, her mama, Mama Rose, and her siblings. Grandmama, her mama, Mama Rose, and her siblings. Grandmama, Mama Rose, and her siblings. Grandmama, her mama, Mama Rose, and her siblings were left by Albert Peyton. I'm not afraid of Grandmama, but she is the last person in the world I would want to hate me. I am afraid to ask Grandmama why she let Albert Peyton in her house if she hates him so much. But truth be told, I know Grandmama did it because she wants her head to finally rest. I usually sleep in grandmama's bed with her, but tonight she asked me to sleep in one of the two beds in what she calls her back room. Why I gotta sleep in the room with him? I whisper. He smelled funny. Cause I said so. Grandmama laughs. That nigga, shit, he liable to steal everything that ain't nailed down up in there. If he don't, she trails off. If he don't what? If he don't have as many nice folk watching him as he can, Key, if you know what I mean. Whenever grandmama says, if you know what I mean, I feel so grown. And like most grown folks, I never ask her to clarify exactly what she means. I asked my grandmother if she likes reading the Bible so much. She says she does. I ask her why, expecting something about Jesus being her Lord and Savior. It's like a long poem, she responds. You know what I mean? It's like a long piece of poetry. I do not know what grandmama means. At the end of the first day that I knew Albert Payton, while grandmama sleeps in the bedroom next to ours, I watch him lying on his back, go in the bib pocket of his overalls. He takes out his gun and a bulb of cotton. He gets up and places the gun and a bulb of cotton on the ironing board next to the bed. I watch Albert Payton strip down to his drawers, open his paper sack, and pull out this short, thin, flowy dress before getting back in the bed. Now Albert Payton is posing in front of me. My great grandfather looked good. I cannot tell the color of the dress and I do not understand what is happening, but I know not to tell grandmama. I know she hates him. I do not want her to kick Albert Payton out of the house. Albert Payton starts snoring. I get up and I grab the bulb of cotton from the ironing board. The cotton sits right next to this once white, now tan, now brown, now black, once white, now tan, once black, once brown, once white, now tan, wig head. Once white, now tan wig head. A styrofoam wig head where grandmama places her wigs. Tomorrow, Albert Payton and I will play football with the wig head. The day after that, we will hide the wig head from each other. The third day that we know each other, we will both sit up in the middle of the night as a dress from grandmama's closet floats across the room, places the wig head where a black human head should be, and motions for Albert Payton and me to walk out of grandmama's back door. So, I wanted to talk about that beginning passage in the book for a lot of reasons, and I really do hate to stop when something gets good, but for me, the rest of the book is actually a memory, though I'm taught to say it's a dream of my grandmama's wig head taking me, my great grandfather, and my grandmother on all of these treks. And one of the wonderful things I think about Word's work is that it gives me the courage, probably, I'm not sure the difference is between courage and foolishness, to talk about this out loud before I've gotten to the end. And whenever I try to create work, and I can see this from Wara's work as well, I'm much less interested in what I have to say than like how I can obliterate the genre that I'm trying to write into. And I'm not really sure what genre I'm attempting to write into, but I know I'm attempting to tell a story of four black people with heads moving through a black rural town at night. One of those black people with heads is a wig head, right? And even saying that out loud makes me feel so strange, except I know that our black heads and our black faces, but I want to focus on black heads, particularly in the deep, deep, deep South, mean so much. And if I wondered if there was any legitimacy to that thought, I think what Wara's work does is it shows me that like black heads floating through space can be sort of interesting. Black heads placed in front of cotton can also be interesting. Black heads like moving through deep, deep, deep cotton fields and or gardens sort of entices me. But what I see so much happen in Wara's work is black heads over, under, and through water. And in writing this book, I've drafted it now probably 4 or 5 times. When I was looking at Wura's work, I kept asking myself, damn, like I see the importance of the headliness, the faceness of our experiences, of our dreams, of our imagination. But strangely, there's no water in this book yet. And part of that is because I'm writing about Central Mississippi. There are lots of creeks. My grandmother's husband drowned in a little lake. I've written about lakes before, but what Wara's work does is it pushes me to think about the importance of Black heads, not just floating through like Central Mississippi space, but floating through Central Mississippi space in humidified, liquefied dreamscapes worlds too. So the humidity that I often describe, I rarely describe it as water. And I'm thinking through this as I go. But what I would like to do is think and talk a bit more about how, yes, the oceans and the Atlantic particularly mean so much to us, but there's a different us in the deep, deep South that moved through daily ritual almost from July till all the entire year except for 2 months. We were still walking through water. Like our Black heads were moving through humidified space. And these thoughts are very fetal. They're not really like thought out or necessarily like brought together. But I would love to talk a bit more about this with Wura if given a chance. And also I just want to thank her for making me think much more about the importance of water in my Central Mississippi home.
Thank you so much, Kiese. That was amazing. I'm just like, I love where you're going with this new work. And kind of for me, you know, even though you're working in all of these different, I always see, you know, where all the genres like coming together. And it's just astonishing and beautiful. And yeah, thank you for sharing it with us today.
You.
So I'm going to leave the stage and Wura's going to come on stage. And then I'll see y'all at the end.
Hey. Hi.
How are you? I'm so happy to talk to you.
I'm so excited. And I am like, what you shared is like, it's just, there's so much. It's taking me to so many places. And I mean, the starting of like your grandmother, I mean, the story about fathers and your grandmother hating this person. And I was like, I've never hated my father. And I did, because I didn't meet him in that. I didn't know him in that way. But, and then also this thing of like, you're reading, your words are a drawing.
Mm-hmm.
When you're talking about not just an image, but like, it's like you're drawing when you're making. It's so beautiful.
It's okay. I just want to talk to you of like, I don't know. The cool thing about this is we can't see other people watching it, right? So I'm just going to talk to you and I'm just going to ask a lot of like ridiculously simplistic questions because those are the questions I really want answers to or want help with. You know, when I saw what you were going to present on it, like I mean, when I talk about it blew my mind, fam, because one, I'm really, really taken by this idea of you doing memoir because just looking at your work that you presented and your other work, like it seems as if you've been writing or creating memoir long before you actually might act. So I'm interested in what role actual like text and image might play in this memoir. But I'm also just interested in the way oceans work in the world and why this is the simplistic shit I just want to add. Like, why do we need Black floating heads in that water? Like, we need it. I felt, but why do we need the heads necessarily? And you're doing different things also with like what we're building on top of the heads too, right? But why heads?
Well, I think like, I mean, face, and the body, but I think like, immediately think of Yoruba cosmology and this belief that you have, there's your head, there's your breath, which is like your life force, your lungs, and there's your shadow that I think about as kind of like the impression you're making in the world, like you're a spirit that's following you around. You never see, but it's there. And to me, it's like, okay, I was here. There's something that remembers me that's fleeting. But the head is like the seat of your everything. It's kind of like your destiny. It's kind of like the life that you chose before you touched the tree of forgetfulness and then were born, and you're trying to like live this good life. You're trying to make sure that you chose a good destiny. So it's like your literal head, but it's also like this sacred life journey that you have. But I don't know. I think you're also talking about something more, is it sinister? Of like, is it a separation from the body? Is it like we're sometimes not all there because we have to be another thing in different contexts in order to survive? Like sometimes I think, are we just always surviving and we've figured out ways to, like the Janus head, have face two directions all the time that are always protecting us? Yeah, what do you think?
I think I'm just wowed by it. My grandmother, who's 92 now, she worked in a chicken plant and she worked as a domestic in white people's houses when I was born. And she used to always, not always, but often talk about the way the white men managers would talk around her. And one of the quotes she would always say is like, like, I'm not just a body, I'm a body connected to a head. And for her, that meant like, I can hear what you're saying, right? And then to counter that sometimes because when I was born, my grandfather died maybe a few months after. Actually, he drowned after I was born. And I lived with my grandmama for a lot of different summers and for major parts of the year between like ages like 6 and 9. And then these men would come to the house, and one of these men was Ofa D. And Ofa D would always be talking about how pretty her face was. And then one time my grandma was saying, like, I got a face, but it's attached to a head. And whenever my hair wasn't combed, my hair, see, I just said it then. She wouldn't go comb your hair. She'd be like, go in there and comb your head. So like your work just made me think of, it made me feel so much and really like lean into this work, because I'm literally writing about a wig head taking my grandmama and her father and me like into different homes in this community. And I'm not writing this shit as like a novel. Like I'm writing it as it happened as a young person because I remember it happening. Now, whether it actually happened, I don't know, but I remember it happening. But so much of that is also caught up in my head. And when I tell my grandmama this story, my grandma was like, Key, it's something wrong with your head. It's something wrong with your head. So I also thought about the role of comedy in your images. And I don't know if you've talked about this much, but can you talk at all about the comic or are there colors that lend themselves more to comic when you
I love this question because when Dawn was doing the intro and she's like, and there's also wit in there, we can be funny. And I was like, oh my God, nobody told me that. It's so unfair. I want to be funny, but I'm not. Everything is so serious and like, and I'm like, I'm always like having these like moments of like, I'm like I looked at one of my drawings that I finished and I was like, it was like the first time like I cried and I was like, it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And I don't usually I don't feel like I would like to create funny things. And I was actually just talking with a friend right before we started this about like, how do you put play into a performance in a way that's like genuine? And how do you not, writing comedy, but like, how do you have a feeling of like, you show up and you're like, oh my God, this is so great that I just want to laugh, that it's just like,
yes,
excellent, right? So I don't even know how to answer that question because I don't feel wit.
Wow.
I don't feel that.
So as a young artist, I mean, I feel like we're all in some way drawn to or repelled by some sorts of, aesthetic pleasure. And as a young person, I always wanted to be, I'm just gonna say, we called them just drawers. I wanted to be a drawer because when I was able to draw in school, like I was able to smile, right? Though the heads and the faces of the people I drew rarely had smiles, I smiled because I was being allowed to do something that was outside of the genre of what I assumed education for Black children in Mississippi was, right? We didn't get to draw much. So drawing generally like brings a smile to my face until I realized, oh shit, I'm not supposed to be smiling. But I wonder what that is about the tradition. And it's so interesting that someone who we look up to a gazillion times still feel sort of confounded and confined by a kind of seriousness that you feel like is antithetical to the comic. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that drawing it gives me joy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not, I don't really know how to make a comic thing as a visual, like a drawing. Like I wouldn't know how to do that in a way that wasn't like trite or contrived. I don't, or like a one-liner.
Yeah.
Like I would feel like, oh, this is funny, but like it's funny. Like I can, like I can make my own. Like I'll make a joke and laugh myself, but I can't. Like I don't know if I could give that to people. Maybe I should work on that then.
Yeah. And humidity. I'm like asking for all the answers now, and this is like terrible. But can we what do you do with like liquid heat in your work?
Oh, I don't know, but like what do you do with liquid heat in your work?
See, I don't do anything. I don't do anything remotely sharp with it. You know what I'm saying? Like I can talk about humidified degrees, or I can talk about the wetness that the humidity evokes in our Black skin and our faces, or our legs, our feet. But I saw humidity in your work, fam. That's what I'm saying. But again, I'm born in Central Mississippi. The Gulf of Mexico is beneath us. We never went down there, and I understand that there's oceans. But also, I again, this is new. I talked about this, but I feel like we are floating in water when there is no water around. Some of them.
It's like a lingering. It's like a lingering thing that you're moving through, but it's you're of it and in it, and it's like it makes me think of this thing you mentioned about I want to obliterate the genre, this because I think in I'm creating, but I'm also interested in the destruction of a thing, how you're making a thing but you're killing a thing, and that if you can do it enough, that thing is going to just dissipate in some way. But maybe it's always the ocean. Okay, so there's the Atlantic and this tension across between Africa and the Americas. But I think you have this twin existence of the South in particular and West Africa that is both this very intense, humid, wet place that is you're constantly made aware of having a body.
Yes.
and of your, it's almost like you're constantly making an impression. The world is constantly taking your impression, right? Because you just feel yourself, right?
Yeah.
And then there are moments when it's just and it's twisty. When you had to sleep in the back room, which I totally loved, and then you're and then the story turns in this direction, which I completely didn't expect. And then the last thing you read before, when we wanted more, but that this thing is it's this thing happens, and then this thing happens, and then this thing floats up in the air, And you all are like, yeah, it's like,
let's go.
Yeah. And then you say, like, it's not a dream, because a dream is a completely other thing. Like, this is my memory.
Right.
And you can see it because you're hearing it, and so you can see it, so it's existing in the world.
Right. Yeah. And I'm thinking about the way memories are, of course, raced and placed, but also like this whole piece is about the way memory is gendered. Do you know what I mean? Like this doll, this wig head, and I go on to describe it, like, it was brown partially because my mama and my aunties used to use brown shoe polish to try to make it brown, but it's not all the way brown. And then I remember I had the hugest crush on this woman who was at the church. She was an old woman. She was like my grandmama's age. Man, I was like, I was in love with this woman, and she had this really fucking, like, she had a mustache. I don't know what to tell you. She had a mustache. So when I remember going home to the wig head, and I remember putting a mustache on the wig head and some red lips. Do you know what I mean? So anyway, my point is, like, I also think that your work makes me think a lot about the way those heads particularly are gendered. Do you know? Yeah. And I wondered if you thought a lot about the way gender works, particularly when constructing the pieces with the heads in them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that okay, so we have a little okay, so I'll just quickly answer that, which is, I'm interested in the Ife heads because I think in many of my drawings, I like the way drawing a thing makes it so it can be whatever you want it to be. Right. And when I don't think of them as like men or women. I mean, some of them are like, oh, she's so beautiful, but when it hits the page, it becomes what it is. And I like that it's not gendered. In the head isn't. The head is the body. Right. The bodies almost always are.
Okay. Yeah. So look, we got a first question. Kids saying, where are you both working spaces between reality and fiction, and intimacy draws connections between those genre definitions. As you create new work, how do you work through those spaces between imagination and fact? Is it conscious, unconscious, drawn during revision? Any thoughts would be interesting here, especially for students who are told so much to stay in one genre. What do you think about that? I mean, I can say that with this new work, I mean, I call it a long poem because I do not want to have to deal right now with the question that the lawyers are going to make me deal with when I publish it, right? Like, did this happen? Can we talk to such and such? Is this the real name of the person? And I do think genres are important, but I also think sometimes genres are market-driven creations, and I'm not sure how much we should, to follow with the water stuff, like drown ourselves in genre, though, we will be, we're going to have to joust with it at some point. But for this, more than anything else I've ever created, like, I'm calling it a poem because I think poetry, for better and worse, and I mean that, for better and worse, can hold what we call fiction, what we call nonfiction, and very few people seem to ask the question of why or how, But I'm aware that when I finish this, I know my editor is going to be like, all right, Kiese, this has got to be a piece of nonfiction. Justify the shit all left, make some paragraphs, and let's go. But I wonder if there's something different happening with visual work.
Yeah, I mean, that question it's not like something that it's not something that I think about in terms of like facts, like a fact, that's not something like, I'm like, what is that? What does that mean? It's not something that enters my, because it's all everything in a way. And I think that we're trying to figure out what our language is. Like, if we can take those moments and just like make the world disappear, then it's actually a language that is, the genre is you, and the genre is me, and the genre is each person has their own genre. And so you just have to follow that road, and then, you can pull it back on itself, or you can say like, okay, well, let's just decide to think about this as architecture, right? And you're writing architecture right now.
I love that. I love
Okay.
that. I do. I love that. Like, you know, you as genre, like Wura as genre, like, right? Like Kiese as genre.
That's
And
so
then
witty.
and witty, and then the obliteration of genre becomes so much more bodily, right? Like if we are the genre that needs to be remade slash
Totally.
right.
Totally.
Love
And the
that.
reverberation of that. Oh, there's a lot. Okay. Why head and not soul or mind or face or body? I think it would just depend on what you're thinking in the moment, like how I mean, I'm thinking about a drawing, like what I would be considering in the moment. But maybe this is a question for you about the specificity of, well,
Yeah. I mean, I've written much more about soul, mind, face, and definitely body. And then I had that realization, and wait, when I write about my body, why do I not think I'm writing about my head? That is, you know, my head is a part of my body, obviously.
yeah,
And even as a teacher, sometimes I think, you know, one of my critiques of traditional pedagogy is we treat the students supposedly as if they're like floating heads in the classroom when those heads are attached to bodies, which are attached to memory, which are attached to history, that we need to respect and honor rigorously. So like I'm just focusing now on head in my work because I've not done it enough. Like that's the reason. And I think that if I do it, like some other things will open up. But again, that's one of the reasons that what you sent in to us was just so it opened up another possibility for me. And somebody says in this last question about so much what we do now on Zoom and internet is like we're floating heads, right? Like that's why I thought this could also be sort of meta. Like we're talking about black heads as black heads. You know what I mean? Like you got some shoulders in there, but you got some arms too and shit. I'm just a head for the most part, you know? Yeah. See, right? I love it.
I could like just raise the computer and be
Oh,
eyes.
yo, that's yeah. I love it. But then this third one is how would you describe your um how would you describe your use of language in your work? For example, how do others affect your language and how does your language reflect or add to your work? Oh, you want to try that one? How would you describe your use of language
I
in your
think
work?
I think language, I mean, if I specific, I mean, I think of language specifically in terms of words and text. Well, if I do, I think that the spoken, the written, the titles often are the structure that dictate where I'm moving in the work or how I'm thinking about what I'm making. So it's like, oh, this is there because the title is She Almost Caught Up with Herself. And that's why, you know, you're making these lines, or that's why you need to cut an opening in. But I also think I think that for me, where I am, like I've been making work for a long time now. So there are these like, there's a lot of like returning to language and like,
Yes.
oh, this connects to this. And I did this so that I could do this. And I was a photographer. And now I'm like, okay, so I want to make a performance where you feel like you're in a film, but you're in the camera, right? And you're like, and I'm like, this totally makes sense. I had to start as a photographer and I had to feel like, oh, I can't draw. My sister and brother can draw. They're the real artists. And then I'll take it. And then I finally took a drawing class and I was like, oh my God, this thing is so magical.
Wow.
You know, you can like make people with lines and it's amazing drawing. Right. And I can do it. And so I think the language is constantly like opening up to us.
And you know, you're talking about revisiting and revisitation, and that makes me think about repetition. And can you talk about like lagoons? Like what about the repetition of those words in the naming of the word?
It's like Legos and all the water, but all the like stuff that's in there, and also all of the like I've been trying to figure out how you render water for years. Like, do you stitch the water? Do you ink the water? Do you draw, you know, is it big? Is it a big stroke? Is it color? It's always like this blue or dark or black blue, or is it just the paper is the water itself all the time? Like that's the ocean. And then you see like highlights of it, right? But Okay, I lost the beginning of your question.
Yeah, I was just wondering about the repetition of lagoons.
Oh, yeah. And so I think when I started that piece, I was just like, okay, so can I just make lagoons and lagoons and lagoons, and how do they morph and reverberate? This thing of like reverberation too,
Yes.
like how does it like appear and reappear and reappear? And also like there's something about a lagoon that's like it could be beautiful, but it's also like murky and mucky and like
Right.
a thing. And so the original title of that drawing was She Caught Up with Herself, Atlantic Side. And then it was like, I don't know if she caught up with herself. I think it's just like lagoons and lagoons and lagoons.
Mm-hmm. I like that a lot. I guess this one is connected to wit, and again, and playing with the witness, thinking about wit and witness and how humor relies on intimate understanding, connection, shared cultural references. Ooh, this is a tough. What translates throughout the diaspora? What translates? That's interesting. What translates throughout the diaspora in terms of humor? I am not equipped to answer that question because I got one stamp in my passport. Like, this is where I out myself as the writer who hasn't been anywhere. But you have been everywhere. So what do you think about like the way wit and humor translate throughout the diaspora?
I think crazy things are funny
Everywhere.
I mean, I think that like I shouldn't use the word crazy, but like things that we can't take, things that like things are a way, but maybe they shouldn't be that way. And I think we need to like wit helps us understand them, but like create language for them. And I don't know if I'm not sure about this word translate. I mean, right. I just think that like I think of the Dominican Republic where like the humor is so, I mean, things are just funny because of the use of language, right? And then also here in Lagos, like, I mean, I don't speak Yoruba, but some of the translation, even the English, it's just funny stuff about like the fact that life is like hard and weird, right?
Right.
And kind of like it would be tragic, except that it's funny.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's just kind of the real part of it.
I mean, I can't speak about the diaspora, but what I do know is I think it might be changing now, but you know, growing up in Mississippi, whenever I would tell or listen to jokes about kids getting whoopings by their grandmother, their mother, if I told those stories in, you know, the most rural part of Mississippi, if I told those stories in New York City, if I told those stories in California, Chicago, white black folks in Utah, black folks start laughing when you talk about those stories of getting your ass whooped as a child, right? I don't know if that translates, and I think that is deeply rooted in some collective trauma and the way we use humor to kind of buffer the way we were raised and blah, blah, blah. But I don't know if that translates to the diaspora, but I do know that's something that I saw pre-2010. And I guess maybe our last question, because we want to get us up out of here on time. What is the South? Its fields, its farmlands, its cities to black folk, but oceans of air. There's some poets up in here. They toiled with our bodies that did all the heavy lifting, but then our minds, our memories, our dreams, and our heads carried everything. Can you speak to that? I wish this person could come on here and speak to that. Oh, yeah, I can speak to that and say it sounds good. They toil with their bodies that did all the heavy lifting, but then our minds, our memories, our dreams, and our heads. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they carried everything. I mean, that's one of the questions I'm asking in heavy is like, what happens when you have a head / body that just doesn't want to carry anymore, right? Like, do you make a decision to forget? And if you do, does your head still hold that? I know bodies hold that. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure if heads carry everything.
I mean, I think also like this, I was thinking about this in one of the other questions, like, I mean, we often talk about like the mind and the soul and the head being separate, but it's not separate, right?
Right.
We are not, like, our brain is everywhere, right? And sometimes when I go running, I close my eyes while I'm running, and it's like our feet can see the road, right? And you can do it just for a few seconds, and like, and I started doing this. Well, I started doing it when I was little, but as an adult, you know, I'd be looking away, and then I'd run, and then I'd see there was like potholes, and I just like, why didn't I trip? Because the whole body is seeing and sensing and experiencing and taking care of. So I think that I mean, maybe we need more language for this, right? We're not as separate as we think, or as the word tells us we are.
Yeah. I love that. I just want to say thank you. You know, I don't know. I just want to say thank you for, I think inspiration, you know, thank you for your art. Thank you for courage. And just thank you for what you just said. Like, I used to run a ton, and I was like obsessive, and I would do that thing sometimes where I would just look down at my feet and try not to look up. But that's another way of something.
Totally.
But I was too afraid to do what you just did, what you just said, which is to trust that our brains know through our feet and everything else. But your art, I think, speaks directly to everything you just said. And I don't know. And that makes me feel happy to be alive, and also very inspired. So thank you for your work.
It's a mutual feeling. I listening to you read, I was like, I felt like, oh, it feels so good to be in this space of like your honesty and sharing of memory, and like allowing us to share that imaginative space. And I think it's really beautiful that we got paired together in this way, like very like serendipitous and sweet. So yeah.
Dawn the genius. Dawn the genius. Thank you. Dawn, you want to come on here and walk us out? Thank you.
You know what? I want to say that this was amazing.
Amazing.
Y'all are the geniuses. Angie Cruz is here because she's the co-curator for this fall, and we would just be in conversation constantly about who would be like really interested in conversation with each other. And this was brilliant. Y'all made it feel like a real salon, for real. Like, you know, we didn't have
thank you, Angie.
in like the dining room or whatever, but this was amazing. Thank you so much. Angie Cruz has an announcement to make.
Yes, I hope those of you who are in Pittsburgh will come tonight to Shenley Plaza. It's sold out, but the weather's gorgeous, and you can lay out on the grass and listen from outside the tent.
It's just like, come to the event tonight. You can't get in. You gotta hang out.
You're still hearing.
This is great. I don't know when the last time I've been to a thing on, you know, at all, not only virtually but in person, where like I felt so many different emotions and laughed so much.
Oh my God, you were laughing the whole time.
And thought about so much stuff that I haven't thought about. So
it's Wura, fam. It's that art, like, you know, I just was like, yo, I'm just gonna be an ignorant motherfucker because that's who I am, you know. And I feel like Wura, like that. Yeah. So let's. Yeah,
I did have a question about sadness, but there was no time.
You know what? You should invite us all to Lagos.
You're invited.
And we'll come visit you, and we'll stream something from there.
Yes,
you're invited.
Yeah, and then Kiese gets another stamp and passport. I've never been to Africa.
I haven't haven't been to the continent.
Nigeria's special. There's no place like it.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Deep gratitude. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for coming. Hopefully we'll see some of y'all later.
Thank y'all.
Bye, everyone.